Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Kenyan doomsday starvation cult leader Paul Mackenzie is charged with 191 counts of murder. Over 400 bodies, including those of children, were exhumed from the Shakahola forest where his followers lived. Also, Senegal's opposition accuses the government of a constitutional coup after Parliament votes to back a move by President Macky Sall to delay elections by 10 months. The passing of the proposal followed security forces storming the chamber. And the continent gears up for showdowns between its top francophone and anglophone sub-Saharan powerhouses. On one side, South Africa's Bafana limber up for their match with Nigeria, whilst the second AFCON semi-final of Wednesday will pit DR Congo against tournament hosts Ivory Coast. Fans in Kinshasa are already buzzing. But first, the Kenyan cult leader Paul Mackenzie has been charged with 191 counts of murder. Hundreds of bodies were found across the acres of the Shakahola forest in the coastal county of Kilifi, where Mackenzie and his followers lived. The self-proclaimed pastor was arrested last year. He founded what he dubbed his Good News International Ministries in 2003, encouraging his followers to starve themselves to death and their children to prepare for the apocalypse. Our correspondent tells us more.
This is the latest chapter in the shocking Mackenzie saga. The cult leader and his 29 associates have been charged with the murder of 191 children. Prosecutors argue that Mackenzie forced his followers to starve themselves to death so that they could reach heaven before the world ended. Now, he'd sold plots of land to his followers in Shakahola forest in the east of the country on a space which he called the New Holy Land. But now it's a crime scene where more than 400 bodies have been unearthed since last April. Many of them had been starved to death, but many more had been strangled, beaten and tortured. Now, dozens of the victims have been rescued, but many more still remain missing. Now, this case has drawn international attention, and many have been asking questions over how this could have gone on for so long undetected. Many of the Kenyans that I've spoken to are still in complete shock. Now, Mackenzie and his associates have pleaded non-guilty, and they're due to appear in court in early March.
Olivia Bizo there for us. Now, Senegalese opposition MPs have warned that the country's democratic reputation is shot and accused President Macky Sall's administration of having launched a constitutional coup. Lawmakers almost unanimously backed the leader's calls to postpone this month's elections until December, after security forces stormed the chamber on Monday night and removed opposition members. There's been criticism and protests from the streets as well. More than 100 academics and personalities teamed up to publish a column describing Sall as the gravedigger of the Republic. Several opposition members were also arrested on Tuesday. Our Sam Brad piece brings us more on the deepening political crisis in Senegal.
Well, there are signs after what was a relatively calm day that things are beginning to heat up here in Senegal. In one sense, quite literally, fires have broken up in one Dakar neighborhood. But even beyond that, I mean, as you've already mentioned, there have been 3 opposition MPs, at least, that have been arrested, alongside a former captain of the country's gendarmerie, that's the police force. Now, the exact charges remain unknown at this point, but we understand that the MPs were arrested after kind of organising campaign rallies, effectively, despite the fact that the president and now the country's parliament have officially delayed the elections until December. They were supposed to be held in February. The opposition is furious. They are now openly branding Macky Sall a dictator on the back of his decision to suspend the country's electoral process. The anger isn't just limited to official opposition parties. People on the street as well are really just viewing this as a very grave time for Senegalese democracy.
And it's not just the disruption caused within the country itself. We saw regional bloc ECOWAS calling for Dakar to stick to the original electoral schedule. What does this postponement mean for the bloc?
The postponement of the elections here in Senegal is really bad news for ECOWAS. It would be going too far to say that the organisation is facing an existential crisis, but it's certainly not in a very healthy state. We've recently had Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger who've left the bloc. The bloc is also kind of arguing currently with another member state, Guinea, also run by a military regime. And the fact that there are these tensions between these countries and the bloc, and now the fact that Senegal, traditionally a really strong, important player within ECOWAS, is going down a very kind of authoritarian road, it really just makes you wonder, what is this body actually for? Should ECOWAS eventually crumble, that would be bad news in terms of trade, security and freedom of movement. So things are looking sticky for the organisation and for the region more widely.
Sam Bradpiece there for us in the Senegalese capital. Look now at some news in brief. At least 10 people were killed in bombings in Mogadishu on Tuesday. Several devastating explosions rocked Bakara, the Somali capital's largest market, that was packed with traders and shoppers. Authorities say the blasts were caused by devices planted in stores. No groups yet claimed responsibility, but some locals have speculated that there is a link to warnings from Al-Shabaab extremists to market vendors that they shouldn't follow government recommendations to install CCTV cameras. French President Emmanuel Macron has appointed a former minister as a personal envoy to Africa. Jean-Marie Bockel has been tasked with explaining to key African nations like Senegal, Ivory Coast, Gabon and Chad changes to the operations of French troops on the continent. They've engaged in anti-jihadist operations but have quit Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger following military coups there over the last couple of years. And a new archaeological discovery in Larache, Morocco, has found the oldest human footprints on record in North Africa and the southern Mediterranean. They date back to an approximate 90,000 years. The traces, there are about 85 of them, were estimated by the scientists supervising the research to belong to at least 5 separate people, including children, teenagers and adults. Now, February 6th is the International Day of Zero Tolerance for Female Genital Mutilation. Kenya banned FGM back in 2011, but since then the practice has migrated to backroom clinics and private homes. In Kisii County, more than 80% of FGM procedures are thought to now be carried out by health workers. Alison Sargent tells us more.
Young girls between the ages of 7 and 11 sing songs and rhymes urging their parents to save them from FGM. It's part of an alternative rite of passage ceremony organized by a local nonprofit in Kenya's Kisii County. While Kenya banned female genital mutilation in 2011, the practice persists, particularly in Kisii, where 80% of the time it's carried out by healthcare workers.
In Kisii, because of the complexity, because of the medicalization and the secrecy, and our parents really feel like they know what they are doing, it's very complex in Kisii.
Doris Kamunto Onsomu no longer does the procedure, but spent years performing it on young girls in medical establishments. At the time, she believed it to be a safer way of preserving the cultural custom that she herself went through as a teenager.
One reason was that if you were uncircumcised, they felt that you would be sexually active unnecessarily, and so it's like when you are circumcised, like they reduce the libido a bit. Yeah, that was one of the major reasons.
But even when FGM is carried out in a sterilized environment, there are still major risks to the girl's physical, psychological, and sexual health.
I went through the cut, but I wouldn't want my children to have to go through the same thing. At a seminar I attended, we were taught about the complications women who were cut had when giving birth. I experienced the same thing when I went to the hospital to give birth.
UNICEF warns that the increase in medicalized FGM could ruin the progress Kenya has made in stopping the practice. According to Kenyan authorities, FGM rates fell to just 15% in 2022, but NGOs say the real figure could be much higher.
Well, Nigerian star Victor Osimhen shook off an injury scare and trained with the rest of the squad in Ivory Coast on Tuesday for the Super Eagles Africa Cup of Nations semi-final against South Africa. Now, that Wednesday showdown has the continent, particularly the Anglophone countries, riled up. But particularly coming just days after South Africa's Grammy win, which saw top Nigerian nominees lose out. Now, the countries are Africa's top economies too, so it is rivalry all around. The other big game to look out for on Wednesday will be a showdown for the Francophone world, pitting the DR Congolese Leopards against tournament hosts Ivory Coast. And in the Congolese capital, the excitement is already palpable, so says our team there. They sent us this report.
Yoka's son, Kinshasa's oldest troupe of entertainers, is getting ready. It's the eve of the Congolese Leopards Africa Cup of Nations semi-final clash with the Elephants, the tournament's Ivorian hosts. The pressure is on. The throbbing songs and beats pump up the crowd and the players.
This year the cup is ours. We're the ones who are going to win it. We're putting on a show to lend the team good luck. They'll hear the sound all the way to Abidjan. We're going to bring the cup home to Congo.
This troupe of fervent supporters is led by Evo Loco, a local celebrity. Before the big day, he's leaving nothing to chance. He superstitiously won't show his costume. It's covered in talismans and feathers.
My stage costume stayed at home. It's like a traditional chief's outfit that brings good luck. I'm guarding it and cleaning it properly for the day of the match against Ivory Coast.
Their supporters' belief in the skills of the Congolese side is unshakable. In 50 years, the Leopards have never won the cup, but this time around, hopes are still high. The excitement has even reached Brazzaville, the capital of the Republic of Congo on the other side of the river. Kinshasa residents have been teasing their neighbours, whose team didn't qualify for AFCON, to keep an eye on the river to follow their victory celebrations.
Tomorrow it's the Leopards match. Who's going to watch? It's only natural for a Brazilian to support the neighbouring country.
The fans are planning to give their fullest support to the Leopards, who, for their part, are using their visibility in the tournament to draw international attention to ongoing massacres by rebel militia in eastern Congo.
Well, looking forward to it. That is all the time we have for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us, though. Do so again. Take care.
The history of our world is ever-changing. The flow of information is constantly increasing. We cover all subjects. We verify. We commit. On the ground, in all circumstances, to anticipate the future by understanding the present. We are with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. France 24, an alternative look at the news.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.